Hey everyone, I am MSK, aka Master Swag King, coming at you guys today with another video. And in today's video, we are going to be talking about the past weekend at the box office as Barbie has now officially hit $1 billion at the worldwide box office. Barbie is the second movie of 2023 to hit $1 billion at the box office. The first movie of 2023 to hit $1 billion at the worldwide box office was the Super Mario Brothers movie. In 2022, we also had two movies enter the $1 billion club. Tom Cruise's Top Gun Maverick, which was a sequel to the original Top Gun movie, as well as Avatar 2: The Way of Water, which was a sequel to the 2009 Avatar movie, directed both by James Cameron. So it's still awesome to see that movies can hit $1 billion, post the COVID-19 pandemic phase at the box office, because the only other movie to hit $1 billion was Spider-Man No Way Home, which came out all the way back at the end of 2021 in December, and like I mentioned before, because we're going to talk about another movie that had a rough start at the box office in its opening weekend, it's looking like that this movie could end up bouncing back at the box office. Now, I mentioned this before, just because a movie has a less than stellar opening weekend and quote unquote flops in its opening weekend doesn't mean a movie can't theoretically bounce back. Movies can also have a slow start at the box office, but then gain more traction. Here, I'll just give you an example of this. So let's say a movie comes out and it does pretty much under what people had projected for it in its opening weekend. Then, as you guys know, newer movies come out constantly. So if someone didn't get a chance to watch that movie during that opening weekend, they'll probably just end up checking it out later, as they probably have another movie they're going to want to watch, obviously coming up in that new weekend, actually. So that also ended up happening with Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1, which is you had that movie coming out first, and that movie did obviously not as well as a lot of people thought in its opening weekend, but as the weeks went by, the movie ended up starting to bounce back in its box office run. Last week it was recorded that the movie had taken in $440 million worldwide at the box office, which is actually really impressive. But the movie still needs to earn upwards about $800 million to even make profit. Now, the difference with Tom Cruise's movie and compared to something else is because Tom Cruise, like I mentioned before in these other videos, has a deal with Paramount where his movie stays in the theaters longer. They just don't pull it out and put it on Paramount Plus, actually. Now, then you had the Barbenheimer, big social media craze that ended up happening. Barbie has now hit $1 billion. Oppenheimer is doing very, very well. And you also have Warner Brothers releasing their sequel to the Meg movie, which came out in 2018. And I haven't got a chance to get to the theater and see the Meg 2, which I really, really do want to see, but I will try and make some time for it very soon. I've just been very, very busy with, content creation and work and getting a lot of stuff done, my own personal life. So hopefully I can make it to the theaters to see Meg 2: The Trench, which is also doing very well at the box office, currently right now. And then you also have Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Mutant Mayhem coming out. And like I mentioned before, I'm not the hugest Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle fan. The only thing I've actually liked out of that franchise in general was that animated series that used to come on, I think 4Kids back in the day, or Cartoon Network. That was amazing, actually. But I ended up watching the newest live action movies, and those were, not that good. So, I would definitely eventually watch Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Mutant Mayhem. Don't know if I go to the theaters to watch it, actually, because I'm just not interested in that franchise overall. But it's not, I've never hated it, if that makes sense, actually. So then, and I think we have Blue Beetle coming out on the 18th, actually. So Blue Beetle is coming out, and with that, Warner Brothers is going to actually have like 3 movies at the box office. Warner Brothers could be dominating the box office toward the end of August, actually. It's a very real possibility. Warner Bros. Hasn't really dominated the box office in a quite a bit of time with multiple movies. They've dominated in individual cases, but not with like 3 movies at once. So that'd definitely be a rarity for them. And yeah, so the thing with elemental that we'll talk about later on is it might be actually bouncing back, which is something you don't really say for, new Disney movies coming out, that they start out pretty bad and they actually just work toward bouncing back, right? So let's start our dive to the past weekend at the box office. Barbie rules box office again with $53 million, taking down Meg 2 and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Barbie towered over the box office for the third consecutive weekend, taking down newcomers Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Mutant Mayhem, and Meg 2 The Trench. Greta Gerwig's fantasy comedy added a remarkable $53 million in its third weekend of release, a decline of just 43% from its prior frame. Barbie has generated $459 million in North America and surpassed the $1 billion mark globally after just 17 days of release. It's the first film directed solely by a woman to cross the coveted milestone. And yes, congratulations, Greta Gerwig, for having that milestone for you. And people are going to mention, what about Captain Marvel? I'll have to show it to you guys. Captain Marvel is actually directed by two people. The first one. It's the second one that is going to be directed by, I think, Nina DaCosta or something like that. Maybe I'm wrong about that. But I remember the first Captain Marvel being directed by multiple people. I remember it was two people. Yeah, I remember that, unless I'm wrong. Yeah, it was a guy and a girl, actually. So, yes, Anna Boden would have that milestone for herself, being the first woman to cross $1 billion at the box office. But this movie is a movie that is directed solely by a woman. I don't know. I mean, maybe I think Marvel wanted to have that duo potential, like what the Russo brothers had with, two people directing Captain Marvel. But now with the Marvels, I'm pretty sure they're just going to be moving on to, just the one director, actually. Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer 2 stayed strong in its third outing with $28.7 million, dropping only 39% from last weekend and bringing domestic ticket sales to $228 million. The rated R historical drama has grossed $552 million at the worldwide box office, becoming the director's sixth film to gross the $500 million mark. Oppenheimer, which has remained a force in IMAX, landed in third place on domestic box office charts behind the sequel to The Meg and ahead of Mutant Mayhem. So yeah, these movies are still doing incredibly well. But, credit to the new other movies that just dropped. Those other two movies, The Meg 2 and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem, just came out, actually. So we'll see in the up-and-coming weeks if they can also start trending more upwards. They don't have to beat Barbie, because that's not going to be what's happening. All they have to do is just make around, depending on their budgets. I mean, the Meg 2 would need to hit about $600 to $700 million. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, let me see what that one would have to reach. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem, I just want to know the budget. That's all I need to know. The budget is $70 million. That's actually pretty low, and that's actually good, because if this movie can take in about $300 million worldwide, that's extremely profitable for them to a certain extent, because you have to factor in marketing too. So if marketing is going to be around another, potentially it's an animated flick, it was pretty promoted a lot, so you're thinking about an extra 30 million. So if this movie can hit about a good 350 million at the box office, it'll be actually pretty fine. I like that number right there. These budgets need to be low. They got to be going down, people. Most of the film's budget goes to these actors, these high profile actors. Now, one could supplement that with, let's say, hiring lesser known actors or doing more animated fares, right? And I think doing more animated fares is the way to go if you want to kind of get some traction at the box office, where it's not obligated, you need to reach a big milestone for that, right? Also, Nolan's success with Universal proves that not only is Christopher Nolan a household name, but he can also have success without Warner Brothers, and he could just basically do kind of any movie, and people are just going to be showing up, actually. People know who Christopher Nolan is. I know people like his other fares outside of, the Dark Knight trilogy, but that Dark Knight trilogy he is really put this guy's legacy almost just through the roof, where everybody knows him, and people just gonna just go to the movies and see what he puts out. Like even movies like Tenet, people are gonna go watch. And I didn't hate Tenet when I watched it. Overall, it's a rare weekend in which 4 movies earned at least $28 million between Friday and Sunday. As a result, the box office is 98% ahead of the same weekend in 2022 and 19% above the same weekend in 2019. Meg 2: The Trench opened in second place with $30 million from 3,503 North American theaters. It's a decent start, albeit a significant drop from the original 2018 film, which opened to $45 million and became a surprise smash with $530.5 million globally. The follow-up film about scientists who take on giant prehistoric sharks cost $130 million, so Warner Brothers is banking on another strong turnout at the international box office to offset its price tag. China Media Capital co-financed the film. So Meg 2: The Trench opened to about, let's say, $15 million less than the 2018 film. Now that might have been due to in part because of the bad reviews. So for Meg 2: The Trench, I mean, you can view Rotten Tomatoes how much you want to review, look at Rotten Tomatoes, right? But Rotten Tomatoes is, and I want to admit this, it is the most popular movie critical review website on the internet outside of like literally, Cinema Score, right? Everyone knows Rotten Tomatoes. A lot of people look at Rotten Tomatoes. I'm not saying you have to base your opinions off what goes on Rotten Tomatoes. I'm not saying that. This movie debuted to a whopping 0%. Now, I'm not saying that the reviews impacted how people turned out for the movie. These are kind of the movies where, like, the first time they happen, it's just kind of like a whatever. But I think when movies like this start getting sequels, people start going like, huh? Because, like, it feels like the magic just leaves from these movies after the initial, like, first one comes out. The sequels could be really good, but that initial, like, grab it has for people. So I'll give an example. Like, let's say Cocaine Bear had a sequel. Would the sequel turn out as well? I'm pretty sure the first Cocaine Bear didn't do that well at the box office, but like that initial, like, oh my god, I want to see this, is just not there anymore, because like the big reveal of what's been going on with those kind of films is kind of over after the first movie, right? So that's just how I personally see it. But I hope Meg 2 does very well at the box office. We'll love to see a Meg 3 come out eventually. The good news is that despite terrible reviews and mediocre audience scores, Meg 2: The Trench has collected $112 million overseas for a mighty start of $142 million. In fourth place, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem pulled in a solid $28 million from 3,858 venues over the weekend and $43 million over its first 5 days of release. The PG film will continue to benefit in the coming weeks from its A cinema score and 96% on Rotten Tomatoes. It costs $70 million, which less than recent animated offerings such as Pixar's $200 million budgeted Elemental and Sony's $100 million budgeted Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. So the animation for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem, I personally didn't think it was that good. I thought the animation just looks like complete dog shit for the most part. It's all blotchy, it's all blurry, the colors look off, the backgrounds look kind of ugly. But, if you have a great story attached to it, it's not going to really matter, obviously. And plus, it's a PG film, so kids aren't going to really notice that stuff anyway. Now, Disney, on the other hand, with their, bigger animated fairs, they justify hefty price tags. And those $200 million budgeted films need to hit about 8 something at the box office. You could maybe get away with 750, and that's maybe getting away with 750. But if you reach like 600, you're breaking even, which is, not good at all. That's pretty much just means you lost. Then you also have that 750 mark. I like to always say is where we need to actually get to. All right, so Oh, what else is here? Okay, so that's just Seth Rogen. That's just more quotes from these guys. And Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg, the creative team behind Superbad, wrote and produced Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which follows Leonardo, Donatello, Raphael, and Michelangelo as they set out to conquer the streets of New York City after spending years sheltered from the human world. Before the film was released, Paramount Pictures and Nickelodeon announced the development of a sequel as well as a two-season Paramount Plus series that will serve as a bridge between the big screen adventures. That's also really interesting too. So they're gonna be having a sequel to this movie. If it does very well, and it's looking like based on its budget, it's gonna end up doing pretty well. Then you have like these little series in advance, so it drives more, traction toward Paramount Plus. So it drives more potentially more subscribers there. It's kind of like what they're going to be doing with like Sonic, right? I mean, we've not really heard too much about the Knuckles TV series for Sonic. I mean, we know that Sonic 3 is going to start filming very, very soon. But I do like that strategy of, make sure the big screen is taken care of and then potentially grabbing more people to your streaming service. Alright, Disney's Haunted Mansion remake dropped to number 5 with 9 million from 3,740 theaters, a 63% dip from its debut. The spooky film, which was curiously released in July, has grossed $42 million in North America and $59 million globally to date. It's shaping up to be a theatrical misfire for Disney, which spent $150 million to produce the film and tens of millions on promotional efforts. Elsewhere, A24's low-budget thriller Talk to Me added a healthy 6.27 million from 2,370 screens in its sophomore outing, with 22.1 million at the domestic box office. The film already stands as A24's highest grossing release of the year. So Disney's Haunted Mansion getting released in July. Come on, like that's an L in and of itself. And A24's Talk to Me. I saw the trailers for it. It looked just really, really creepy. I mean, that's not something that I would really be interested in going into the, box office for and watching the movie, but hey, it's A24 has their fans, and horror, they definitely show up to support the movies, which is good. It's nice to have a fan base like that. But to me, when I saw the trailers, it just wasn't really hitting for me. But that's also good that it's now doing decently well. And being in this kind of spot and doing that well amongst these other big behemoths with these other bigger corporations with all this massive marketing money that they can put toward their films is actually impressive. All right, so the next piece we want to talk about is the Elemental movie. Now, I saw the trailers for this, and, it didn't look... The animation is weird looking and just looks so it's just weird looking. It's not bad animation. I think it's just weird looking. Now, for me, the thing here is this movie cost about $200 million to make. So this movie needs to actually do very well. Now, I always separate box office to, like, let's say home video sales, because that is two separate sources of revenue. You could combine them. There's no doubt you can do that. But if you're talking about just one isolated incident, this movie needs to draw more here than on home video sales, So, Pixar president on Elemental's unlikely box office rebound. This will certainly be a profitable film. Let's hope so. The elements are finally coming together for Pixar's Elemental, which is enjoying a rebound after a sparkless start at the box office. The animation adventure stumbled in its debut with $29.5 million domestically and $44.5 million globally. By far the worst opening in Pixar's 28-year history. Keep in mind, this movie is potentially going to rebound with Pixar's worst start ever. Yet 2 months later, its ticket sales have slowly and steadily climbed to 148 million in North America and 425 million worldwide. That's nearly 5 times its initial tickets, a rare multiple for an original film. Which is also interesting, and I've told you this before, and I mentioned this, I think, in other videos similar like this, is a movie can have a less than stellar start, but can bounce back. It's kind of rare that happens, but it's a possibility. Maybe it's because people saw everything else already and was like, hey, let's go watch this. You can take the kids to go watch this too. Set in a world inhabited by anthropomorphic elements of nature, the Peter Sohn-directed Elemental revolves around two fire and water elements who discover they have more in common than meets the eye. Elemental cost $200 million before marketing, which included a lavish trip to the Cannes Festival for its global premiere. So even though audience kept showing up after opening weekend, the family-friendly movie has just itched out of the red. However, it's an encouraging turnaround for Pixar after the box office disasters of 2019's Onward and 2022's Lightyear, as well as the missed opportunities of Soul, Luca, and Turning Red, which were sent directly to Disney Plus during the pandemic. Yeah, I mean, depending on what the marketing budget is, I'd imagine it'd be like, this is a big blockbuster tentpole. It's gonna be a pretty hefty price. So yeah, this movie still needs to hit a big number, but that bounce back number is not that bad. As the film crossed the $400 million mark, Pixar's president Jim Morris spoke to Variety about what's behind the box office rebirth of Elemental. All right, the person asked, okay, so that's essentially, do I have to really read all? Oh Lord, this person is about to see me on some bullshit. Oh, goodness gracious. Goodness gracious. Because going through all this, it's going to be basically just a PR spin for the most part. This is the part right here that's really important. Will Elemental be profitable? We have a lot of different revenue streams, but at the box office we're looking at now, it should do better than break even theatrically. And then we have revenue from streaming. That's not the same. Theme parks and consumer products. This will certainly be a profitable film for the Disney company. Is there a way to make these kinds of movies at a lower price point? That's a constant question. One of the ways you make these films for less money, and almost all of our competitors do this, is to do work offshore. It's only us and Disney Animation that makes animation films in the US. Anymore, with all of our artists under one roof. We feel like having a colony of artists approach has differentiated our films. We hope to find a path to make that work. Elemental was particularly expensive because of all the characters have visual effects. We had been getting the film's cost down. Okay, so they would essentially license out the work to, business elsewhere to lower the price point, but that still doesn't, really explain how a film's budget balloons like that. It's most likely due to the voice cast, and a lot of people don't understand when movies you got financing and all sort of stuff I don't want to get into right now, but those are the big questions I really wanted to go over actually. The other thing I'll say about our film budgets is that our whole company exists only to make these films. So when we say a budget, that is everything it takes to run the whole company. Sometimes the budget for other films that get reported are physical production costs and don't include the salaries of executives and things like that. Our budgets include all of that. So there's some accounting context that gets lost, but that doesn't mean they're not expensive. So what's the biggest challenge right now in getting family audiences to theaters? It's expensive for a family to go to the movies. It can be $100 afternoon for a family, and that can be a stretch for some to do. The other thing is that during COVID, we trained our audiences to watch our movies on Disney Plus. He admits it. That was a horrible decision to do. I won't say there was a lot of choice. For periods of time, it was the only thing we could do. With a little work to unring the bell and motivate families to go to the theater and not wait a few months to see it on Disney Plus. That was largely in part due to Bob Chapek, but I can kind of see where he's coming from. Is there an ideal window between a film opening in theaters and moving to Disney Plus? Thinking back historically, a summer movie would go to pay-per-view in autumn, which gave a 3 or 4 month window. That would be a traditional window that I'd love to see reestablished. We'd make our films for the big screen. We love for people to see them with an audience. See, this is the thing. Yes, and I remember pay-per-view. Remember how that was a big thing? So I think back then movies could perform a whole lot better due to the fact that, there was a longer window for them to perform. So if a movie flopped, it was like really, really bad because the longer stretch to get money at the box office was exponentially wider. You see what I'm saying? What are the other bigger questions here? Where do you... okay, at one point... okay. Nothing crazy here. At At one point, did you notice it was enduring at the box office? The numbers were falling off so little. In some markets, it would be a 12% drop from the week before, and we had a handful of markets where ticket sales were rising. You just don't see that in this day and age. You typically expect a 50% drop on an average basis. We thought, well, that's cool. Okay. So where do you think ticket sales will top out worldwide? We're hoping it'll get to maybe 460 million. I always wish higher. I'd hate to disappoint myself, but I'd love to see it get to 500 million. Okay, interesting. All right, we'll see where it goes. Okay, so that is pretty much it. So Pixar kind of rebounding at the box office. He gave some nice industry insight, which I do enjoy personally, but it's one of these things where I think the movies deserve a longer window to perform than just that throwing it on streaming service after too. They don't, because right now, at least Variety, they didn't even talk about Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning. So I want to see where Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 is doing. Let's see. Box office mojo. All right, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. Let's see what Box Office Mojo is putting it at. So right now, it is $5 million away from crossing $500 million at the box office. Domestically, Mission Impossible 7 has taken in $152 million. Internationally, $342 million. That's really impressive, actually. Let's see. It's dropped. So what day are we in? We're at August, right? So it's like weirdly bounced back / weirdly declined. It's had 60% declines, 52% declines. That's actually really crazy for a movie like this. So yeah, all right, just want to make sure I was checking on this. There's no other movies coming out right now. I think we have Blue Beetle dropping very soon, but that's pretty much it. So yeah, let me know what you guys think about, the past weekend at the box office. What are you currently seeing right now at the movie theaters? If you're taking your family out, taking your loved one out, let me know in the comment section below. I'll see you guys later. Like, comment, and subscribe. Most of all, enjoy. I am MSK, and this is Online Cinema Entertainment, your one place for online cinema. All right, see you guys later. Deuces. Peace.